and I've heard you speak and answer about this before, but I think that the people that you've spoken to haven't represented this point well enough. The Quran seems to be structured with a certain sort of math and have a certain sort of depth to the things that it's saying.
The problem with that is the Quran that you think is structured only goes back as far as 1924.
Yeah.
The 1924 edition. So this structure that you find today was not true or reality prior to 1924. It was in 1924 where in Egypt they decided to standardize an Arabic text of the Quran for mass consumption. So then what do you say prior to 1924 when the structure and the particular Arabic text that you're following, the Hafs text, did not exist until 1924?
I think one of the theories that I've had is that I don't know what kind of time frame God works in, and maybe he could have, maybe it might only be complete now. But that again,
okay,
that's
let's go that.
You know,
of what benefit is it for the people in the 7th century, 8th century, 9th century, 10th century, when they could not appreciate this mathematical miracle to confirm to them the divine origin of the Quran, so that Allah leave them in darkness about its divine origin?
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. So I guess my next question would be then who did come up? Well, it's not that impressive, really, is it? Then, so you're saying that the final Quran was finalized in what year?
In 1924. I gave you the article right there. If you go to private chat, I'm going to show it to you.
Fantastic.
This is the fact here. This is it right here. Let me show it to everyone on the screen. Guys, take these articles free of charge. This comes from books that I research. I buy the books, and then I give you their information free of charge. So, guys, if it's free, you should study it and use it so that when people ask these questions, you're prepared. So here's that article. I'm going to show it to you right here. Let me go full screen. Let me do it this way. Okay. The 1924 Arabic Quran, an uninspired human compilation. And here I'm quoting from a book by a professor of Islam. And here it says, let me read some quotes right here, guys. The article's there. And I'm quoting, "Can you believe that the official copy of the Quran used today did not exist in its current form until 1924? Surprisingly, today's Muslims believe that this copy is identical to Uthman's Quran from the 7th century. Why is it necessary to examine the 1924 Cairo edition? Right? A little background is worth noting. So if you don't mind, I'll give you the background. You want me to read a little bit?
Of course.
Okay. Now, how did this 1924 edition come to fruition? The Quran is the only heavenly text that is preserved by Allah from any errors, said my high school classmate Ahmed. Ahmed assumed, right, that the Bible had been altered and corrupted over time because the Imam in our neighborhood, and by the way, he's an Egyptian professor, so this is what they would be subject to, right? His Imam in our neighborhood mosque often repeated these accusations. Such accusations are spread by many Muslim clerics, as we will discuss in question 22. But many informed and educated Muslims reject them altogether. My friend Ahmed was a nominal Muslim during our school years. He was not extraordinarily diligent in studying Islamic tenets or reading the Quran. He relied heavily on what he heard from the Imam. Isn't that the case? That people just pair what their Imams tell them, thinking they're speaking the truth. Now, just so I can get to the point, right? Let me just read. I got to read a little bit, get you the point. Of course, these questions demonstrate many Muslims' unfamiliarity with the process of textual corruption, textual criticism, or establishing the best scriptural text based on manuscript examination. In other words, many Muslims wrongly assume that if a scripture exists in critical editions, which seek to establish the meaning closest to the original by comparing multiple manuscripts, then this scripture is flawed. The science of textual criticism to restore the original. That is true of all documents prior to the printing press. That's what he's talking about, that process. Muslims think that doesn't exist for Islam. This assumption is problematic because it assumes that the Quran has a different story, as if it dropped straight from Allah to Muhammad. It is to them a text frozen in time, from Muhammad's proclamation to the supposed writing of the proclamation on various materials, to the compilation of the caliphs, right? To the copying of manuscripts by scribes throughout history, Furthermore, this unedited text matches the 1924 Cairo edition exactly. But now here are the facts, guys. But this is impossible to support with evidence. Many manuscripts of the Quran written throughout Muslim history, when compared to one another, this is a fact, by the way, reveal ample differences, scribal errors, and obvious variants. These discrepancies are addressed in question 15. This is from the book I'm quoting. Simply stated, what many call the unchanged and errant copy of the Quran is actually a 20th century project. This is what Quran you're reading? That's standardized all over the world. It only came into existence in the 20th century. Not surprisingly, the editorial board responsible, it's right there, for the 1924 project stated in the final copy that the project was a result of significant concerns, there it is, significant concerns among Muslims regarding errors in copies previously used in Egypt's local schools. So the reason why they standardize it is because the schools were using different Arabic Qurans that were at variance with one another. And they were concerned because when you go to this school, you're reading a particular Arabic text, and then you go to that school, they're reading a different Arabic text that's not identical. So they say, you know what? We're going to squash this problem. We're going to standardize one text, and they'll all follow it, the 1924 edition. Right? So it says, nonetheless, most Muslims do not recognize this history and consider the 1924 Royal Cairo edition of the Quran Textus Receptus, received text, that existed throughout Islamic history since Uthman. This copy has become the official Quran. Still, there's a deeper problem with the 1924 Cairo edition. This copy was achieved not through a critical assessment of the many available readings of the Quran, but rather through the selection of one and only one particular variant, which was then advanced as authoritative. Now, I can give you more, see, because it admits, of all the Arabic Qurans that still exist, they have variations, they don't agree. So then they decided to take this particular qiraat or qira'ah, some people answer qira'ah, of Hafs, because in the Arabic Quran, supposedly there's at least 20 Arabic variations of the Uthmanic recension, such as Hafs, Duri, right, Warsh. They chose Hafs among all the rest, and they chose to standardize that. But interestingly, there are Muslim sources that say Hafs was a liar and a thief. He used to steal books. And that's the Quran they standardize. So your so-called miracle goes no further back than 1924.